All right, welcome back, Melissa. How are you?
Great, Al. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing real well. Melissa Arronte from Medallia, you've been doing great things in the employee experience space. If you would introduce yourself a little bit and what you're going to be talking about today.
Sure. Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. So thank you for letting me be here. And thank you to many of my friends who've chosen to join. Probably the whole audience are my friends, and I appreciate you coming and listening. What I wanted to talk to you about today is a few different ways that we can look at employee listening. That's what we'll cover in the first part. Then in the second part, I'll give you some examples of what I've done in my past and what some of our customers have done. And to tell you a little bit about my background, I've been with Medallia about 1.5 years now. And I had previously been a customer of Medallia. I'd been a head of employee experience and then moved into customer experience. So familiar with implementing both with Medallia, and really excited to share with you the way we're thinking about it now.
Well, I'm, for one, very excited to listen and learn from you. Each time we connect, I find something that's insightful, particularly given that you've taken it out of the theoretical and actually brought it to life. And obviously that's Medallia's mission. It has tools that enable this. So, and particularly with the launch, and this is the idea of, hey, we raise the whole space, everyone's going to benefit, because obviously Microsoft Viva was launched and there's a bunch of activity in the employee experience space. So there's so much attention being given to it, and it's highlighting the fact that, hey, we've been doing this for a while and we have some things to share. So I'll get out of your way, let you present these three concepts, and we'll have a quick chat, and I guess we'll go into some examples. Is that right?
Yes, exactly right.
All right. So have at it, and I'll talk to you in a bit.
Great. Thank you so much, Al. I think Al, in his intro, actually highlights something important that I think, so many things have been happening in the technology space related to employee experience that I think there's been so much focus on the technology. And today, what I want to talk about, as Al was saying, is really the practical application, how we think about it, how we actually get it done inside of companies based on what we've been doing with our customers and some of my own experience, because there's so many different types of technology out there. And what I think is so important about what we do at Medallia is we really focus on ensuring that our customers have a great way that's been successful with other customers of working on employee experience and really making a difference in the lives of their employees and their customers. And that's really what I'm going to focus on. And so we talk about it as employee understanding. And I just want to share a quick story with you. The title of my session was really that employees don't just want to be listened to, they want to be heard. And the story I'll share is some experience I had at Liberty Mutual. So any of you who were with me at Liberty Mutual know Helen Sales, who was a CHRO for many years at Liberty, an amazing leader. And I remember something so telling in an initial meeting I had with her as a new hire, head of people analytics. And I had been in a few meetings with her, and I could tell she had some frustration. And I asked her what it is. And she said to me, you're not listening to me. I said, but I am. I'm listening as closely as I can. She said, well, then you're not hearing me. And that really took me by surprise. And as I reflected on it, I really understood that what she was saying is that I was listening to hear what I was expecting to hear. I was listening to hear that she was saying things that were consistent with what I was thinking and the analyses that I was planning. But I wasn't listening to hear her ideas and what she was bringing. I was just listening for confirmation. And I think as employers, that's what can happen to us. When we send surveys and when we listen to employees, and what I think that they're saying is these definitions here, it's not enough that we're giving attention to what they're saying. They want to be heard. They want someone to acknowledge what they're saying in a deep way, that they can hear it and understand what it means about them. And that really brings us to what we say at Medallia, that really we have what we call a continuous understanding approach. And by continuous understanding, it's not just surveys, it's also signals, because there's so much great information that employees, I will say, leave around the organization as they go about their day and doing their work and getting inspired and serving our customers. And those can be so insightful to us about the type of environment that they're working in. So I'm just going to spend a minute talking about signals. And then the second half, after we talk with Al, I'm going to give you some more lists of examples of signals. But briefly, the idea of a signal is data that comes in telling us about an employee's experience that isn't coming just from a survey that they've completed. So an example could be how they take time off, right? So are employees taking time off in a way that they're saving it up for a future vacation because they intend to stay with us longer term? Or are they taking their time off as quickly as they earn it because they're avoiding work that they don't like, or they're potentially job searching? Another thing we could look at as a signal is information about their team or the store they work in or their department. Are they working on a team which has higher than average recognition awards? Or are they working on a team that has higher than average employee relations issues? Right? These two signals give us very different ideas about the type of environment that they're working in. Another one can be information about their manager. Are they working with a manager who is brand new? Are they working with a manager where they had just been terminated and now they have a new manager? Are they working with a manager that's very different from them in terms of age, race, gender, other factors that we can measure? This is a lot of good information that gives us a sense, again, of the type of environment they're working. So to go on with the continuous understanding approach, we see three views. And first, I'm going to cover the company view. And this is the one that we're all very familiar with, that we've all been working in for quite a long time. And this is where we create a highly structured survey, like an annual engagement survey, or a pulse that's sent at a specific time, like quarterly or monthly, usually with a set of questions, or a life cycle or journey moment, something like onboarding or training, right? And we call this the company view because we have created these surveys based on things that are important to us as employers. Departments that we have, like an onboarding department or a training department, maybe it's quarterly because that's when we have financial reviews, and that's usually the rhythm of how people do things at the company. And this is a set of questions that we've determined we want feedback on to improve policies and procedures. And we usually have some people who are responsible for those. And so it makes sense that we need to get that feedback so we can improve those things and improving the employee experience. And this has been successful for a long time. But it is just a piece of the puzzle, right? When we think of the universe of things that employees are experiencing every day and the things that they could be talking about, this only asks about a small subset of that. So there are other views that we can take into consideration. So another one is what we call the personalized view. So the personalized view differs from the previous view in these are moments that the company has not curated. They may have job transfer. Some companies have curated this moment and have invested in it like they've invested in onboarding for new hires, but many companies haven't. Or when an employee gets a new manager, many companies have not invested in that moment, in that experience, and how that's going to be for both the employees and the managers, right? And the other departments that they work in. It just happens. And it's up to the people within it and the best that they can do to kind of figure it out without anything that's been created by the company to help them through it. And these end up being really critical moments that predict future employee behavior. For example, an employee gets a new manager. Maybe there's a new philosophy, a new strategy. The employee is concerned about how the manager will view them. This is an opportunity where the employee pauses and takes a moment to reflect on the environment in which they're working. Is this meeting their expectations? Is this what they thought it was going to be? And what are they going to do next? Are they going to stay and be engaged, maybe even be more inspired? Or are they going to begin job searching? Or are they going to withdraw? Or even worse, are they going to make it harder on the people working around them because they're unhappy? Right? These are really critical moments that predict future employee behavior. And these are critical times for us to reach out, express our concern as employers at this time, and get feedback on how these employees could be better supported at this time so that we can either immediately reach out to that employee and better support them, or that we can learn from this so that we can create a curated experience for employees going through this moment because it's a common moment and it has a significant impact on future behavior that we care about. Things like customer experience, productivity, turnover, and of course, the employee's experience themselves. And I give a couple other examples here. An employee where a peer is promoted above them, or where an employee is working in a system and they're having to create a time-consuming workaround because the system doesn't match the process that they have to use. So it makes it even harder for them. These are all things that we can get from our systems. We can trigger it from an HRIS, so we can see it from the system they're interacting with by having a digital survey there, and we're able to reach out and touch them at that moment and get real-time feedback and be able to reach out to them or improve the experience for the future. And then the third area we call the organic view or the employee view. And this is my personal favorite and where I really spend a lot of my time. I believe if there's nothing else that a company is able to invest in for employee experience in the measurement and continuous improvement, I would recommend the organic view. It's the most simple for both the employer and the employee and actually provides the most insight. And the way I describe the organic view as an always on. And by always on, I mean a survey or a feedback mechanism that is available to employees 24/7 at any time they have the opportunity. And I invite you, if you want to answer in the chat, please tell me if you already have an employee always on. I know many companies do, and many companies are struggling with how to do it, and some companies haven't implemented it yet. So if you don't mind in the chat, just indicate a yes or a no if you have an employee always on. Most companies have a customer always on. And having worked in customer experience for a short time, I was surprised to find employees using the customer always on as a way to provide their feedback because they couldn't find another mechanism to provide their feedback. So in so many ways, I see this as such an opportunity. And in the second half, I'll share with you some great examples about how our customers have been using this. But to tell you a little more about an always on, it really is extremely simple. It's a very short survey. And by short, I mean 3 questions or less, including an open end. And the open end is what's critical, so that employees at any moment in the flow of their work are able to provide feedback and ideas about their own experience, their coworkers, their managers, customers, provide feedback on systems, processes. It could be anything. But we as employers don't have to figure out what to ask them in order to get this information because it's always available to employees. Whenever the feedback or the idea strikes them, they're able to jump into this tool, click a button, answer a question, fill in the open end, and they can fill in the open end either by typing, by using their voice recording, or a video recording. And then we capture that information and they're back out again. It takes less than a minute. And we often think about placing the always on somewhere where the employees go on a regular basis because it's what they use for work. For example, at a bank, you can imagine a banker completing a transaction with a customer. And then when the transaction is complete and they exit, there they are on their intranet page or wherever they exit, and there's the always on. So anytime they've completed the transaction and they have an idea, they're able to put something in. But it isn't popping up in their way. It's just something that's there. And that we call the passive always on. So employees take the initiative to provide it when they have feedback or ideas. But what's critical in making it always on successful is also having it active. Not a separate survey, but the same always on being pushed on a regular basis that matches the rhythm of the business. So for example, maybe in the business, something is happening. There's been a merger and acquisition, a reorg, a system change, an incentive change, whatever it might be. That's a great opportunity that something has happened and you want to get feedback from the employees. Add a question to the always on and push it to them in their usual communication methods. For some, that might be an email. For others, it might be on the manufacturing floor that there's a stand-up each morning and the supervisor can say, there's a question for you all in the always on. Hop in and answer it today. It might be that there's a huddle. It might be that employees text each other. It might be a note on the bulletin board and a QR code to use. There's so many ways, but the key is that we meet them where they are so that it's part of the flow of their work. It's matching the rhythm of what they do because this should be integrated in how they work. We connect and engage with employees and customers every day. And by the way, we happen to be a bank or a telecom company or a retail company, but this is how we get our work done. So these are the three views and the three ways we really think about continuous understanding. And then across all of this, as I mentioned, is the signals, the information that we can get that employees leave around the organization every day, where we can really understand the context in which they're working, that adds so much richness to their survey feedback. So now we have a section that I have entitled Questions and Answers with Al. So I will exit.
It's a good title.
It's clear.
Hey, Melissa, just a couple call outs and a question that I'm going to, with an always on platform, whether you call it listening or understanding, there is arguably a risk of not taking appropriate action. Because the frequency of the information coming in might be overwhelming for someone to take action. Do you see that as a real risk? How would you coach organizations to mitigate that risk of, not taking action and actually disengaging people because they don't feel heard or they don't feel understood?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Al. And we have a number of different answers. So the first is in the past, when we did annual engagement surveys frequently, we created, and I did too, a very large process around it. It was typically really time consuming. Mm-hmm. And people think that with an always on, they also need the equally large separate process, which is a lot for everyone to manage. And for managers, it feels like one more thing I have to do.
Right.
So I really discourage creating a separate process. It's so important that this is integrated with the work they do already, because managers already today, every day, are making decisions about the work environment and how they're making changes in an attempt to improve it, but they're doing it with very little data. They're doing it based on what they hear from a few people or from other managers, or what they read in an article that sounds like a best practice, maybe is a best practice. Not sure if it's best for this team. So what we're doing now is we're giving them data so that they can make an evidence-based decision. They have feedback from their employees, and they can see trends of feedback from employees in other areas of the company, so that they can really understand where they should invest their time. They have a lot of hypotheses, and several of them are probably very good and probably right on, but they don't know which ones aren't.
Yeah.
We're simply giving them data to do what they were already doing. We're helping them do their job, not adding another piece to it.
Yeah, given your background, you get this more keenly than most as part of your educational experience, part of your professional experience and history, is when we're asking questions in surveys, there is a construct known as a referent, meaning the respondent is thinking about a certain person, group, entity, something that they're referring to in the question. So sometimes change happens at the manager level. Sometimes it happens at the group level. It can happen at the organizational level. It can happen at all these levels. So the question that Victoria asked was, how can an org effectively action on an always on platform? And what I wanted to do is add that broader color to it. Because if I'm a manager looking at the dashboard, okay, this is directly relevant to me, I can action on feelings of respect or inclusion or something like that. Organizationally, if I am, if it's a cultural change or a comp thing, that requires a systematic change, that's going to be out of my sphere of influence as a manager. So can you talk to that need, and how can ultimately an org systematically respond to employee needs?
Yeah, excellent question, Victoria. And I love your add-on, Al. So the idea with that is we want to provide these results and the transparency to these results at all levels of the organization, starting with the individual employee. So we think it's so important to provide an employee level dashboard. Now, this doesn't mean a lot of dials and charts and, analytics for them to go through. Something as simple as, what are the top 3 topics employees are talking about this week? And how have they changed, up or down? Something as simple as that. So now, as an employee, I know what people are talking about in my group or my division, whatever you choose to report it at. And now I'm empowered Not only do I have transparency, now I'm empowered to say, I can see the big topic this week is communication. So in my staff meeting, I'm going to ask that we talk about communication, or I have an idea about how to improve communication. So it can even start at the employee level. And then you're right, Al, at the manager level, managers will work with their employees. They're already talking to each other. The survey is just the beginning of the conversation. We don't need to hear from every employee. We just need a few employees putting in some of their feedback. And now we can start a conversation about what's going on and how we can improve it. And then some of the things, you're right, go to a higher level. And we have all kinds of analytics that you can run through, text analytics, understanding where is it that employees are making suggestions. So AI will serve that up. Where is it that employees are saying that they're exerting a lot of effort to get things done? AI will serve that up. That maybe will go to the IT department or the facilities department. So the idea is we can use text analytics and AI to figure out where are their problems, where are their suggestions, exactly, and route them to the right department. So I, as a manager, can't fix the IT system, but there's an IT department that can, and the data can go right to them in real time. They could even reach back out to the department and help them if it's a localized thing. And if it's a broader thing, they can work on the solution. And then when they complete it, the last piece of the employee dashboard shows the actions that have been taken as a result of the survey. So anytime an employee looks at the dashboard, they can see IT's just upgraded this system. Or in my group, my manager's just done something to improve our communication.
Well, I got to be careful about saying such things, but I'll just say it. That's pretty darn cool. I want some of that. I mean, congratulations, because that, again, to the way I introduced you, it's one thing to talk about these things conceptually. It's another thing to bring it to life, which actually is a segue to a question from Jillian from IBM, which has to be asked. And I have my own response, and I imagine you do too. It's if you have an always on platform in an organization, is there a risk of having over surveying or survey fatigue? What are your thoughts and comments to that thinking?
Sure. And you've probably heard me say this before, and others have said it too. There isn't any such thing as survey fatigue. It's actually a myth. It's lack of action fatigue. So employees are not tired of being asked how they're doing or how things could be improved for them. They're tired of being asked and no one taking action as a result of it. So part of the way we address that is empowering employees with the dashboard, so they have some transparency to the feedback that's coming back and transparency to the actions that are being taken. The other piece I would say is an always on really reduces that risk, because there's the passive. We're not pushing it to employees every day. We're pushing it to them when it matters. We're pushing it when we've had a system implementation, a reorg, something important. It doesn't have to be every week or every month. It's when it matters. And then it's just there when they need it. Managers can even say to them, and we certainly experienced it when I would run this at my previous employer, what we'd call write-in campaigns. Something happens and the employees want us to know about it. So they write in and then it pops on the analytics and we can all see it right away. Very effective communication and in real time.
Interesting. All right. I want to, you have some more examples and I want to make sure that we leave time for that. So do you want to, jump into those right now? Would this be a good time to do that?
It would be. Of course, I'm afraid to share my screen because of what happened last time.
Yeah, the force is with you. I can feel it.
All right.
I'll leave you to it. I'll be back in a few minutes.
Sounds great. So I wasn't going to give any examples of the company view because you all are so well familiar with those kinds. But if you would like some examples of items or text analytics or anything else with the company view, please feel free to email me. I'd be happy to share those with you. I want to talk about the others, the personalized view, the organic view, and the signals. So here are some examples of the personalized view. I chose to do this by job, but it could be done in so many different ways. Let's think about a sales professional, and they're using a sales system. It might be Salesforce or some other. But the idea is there's so much rich information about what's happening in the lives of our sales professionals in that system. You can think about when they're a new sales professional and the first time they land an account, right? What a great opportunity to reach out to them and understand how things are going for them, helping them even reflect on what was successful and where they can improve and how they could better be supported. What kind of obstacles did they encounter? We can also think about a time when a sales professional loses an account. They didn't win the cycle, or it had been a long time account that they didn't renew. It could be they've had a string of losses or a string of wins. It could be that some of their accounts were shifted, as happens so often, and now they suddenly have new accounts and they've lost the relationship with their old accounts. These are major moments in the life of a sales professional, and we have it all captured in our sales systems. And we can quickly and easily use that as a way to trigger a question to them. One, we're showing concern at a time that's critical to them. We can even recognize them at that time. We can customize these messages, and we can also get feedback from them that we can use to help them in that moment, since it's in real time, or we can use it to accumulate and understand how to make these moments for them much better, right? Much more supportive, much more meaningful. How awful to make a sale and maybe someone says something to you, but maybe nothing happens, right? Or worse, what usually happens, you lose a sale and no one says anything, or they only say negative things. So much opportunity here, right? And we all know that there's patterns in this data that tells us well before the salesperson turns over that indicated they were likely to turn over. So we can also use this, as some of you may already be doing, to proactively prevent turnover by making a prediction based on the events that are in the sales system, basic demographics like tenure, level, previous incentives paid, and their responses to surveys. And together we can get a good understanding of who's likely to turn over and reach out and prevent that. Then we think about a banker. From my experience working in banking, we were able to see a lot of things in a banker's life that had a significant impact for them. In the incentive system and in the scheduling system, we were able to see when a banker had higher than average variation in their incentive payments, higher than the standard deviation, we knew that they were unstable. It affected their work-life balance because it meant their scheduling had been affected. That's what is affecting their incentives. And we knew, of course, it was affecting their ability to pay their bills, to plan for things, and likely affecting their confidence because they weren't making the money they expected to be. There was feeling a lack of control because there was so much variation in their incentive payments. We could also see from the scheduling system, if we saw that their schedule changed frequently, especially if we saw weekday, weekend changes, so that they tended to work weekdays and then we see them scheduled on the weekends, or see them having more off-hour scheduling, evening scheduling, especially for banks that run 7 days a week, open in the evenings, seeing those kinds of changes where it wasn't consistent. I always work weekdays, or I always work weekends, or I always work evenings, but suddenly I'm evening and then I'm weekday, I'm weekend and then I'm evening. Makes it very hard for them to manage their lives. And we know that they're having work-life balance issues, very likely because it's hard to manage outside of work activities, school, family, second jobs, exercise, other commitments, whatever it might be. So again, these are great opportunities for us to be able to trigger a survey and find out just 2 questions, kind of what's going on, and give them the opportunity to describe it. Then we can reach out to them or their manager to help correct it or understand that it's okay, or we can learn from it to know when is this an issue and something that we can manage for employees going forward who are going to go through these. So really personalized moments to the banker and to the sales professional, but happening to many people at once, so we can really learn from it and automate it. And then let's go to the call center agent. This one I find so interesting in the personalized view. So we can know from the call system how a call is gone, right? We've got call transcripts. There's all kinds of analysis going on the call and the tone of voice. We have trigger words. I know in one of my previous employers, when a customer said the word ridiculous, we would issue a save team, because we knew once a customer said the word ridiculous, such as "this is ridiculous," that we were about to lose them. They were much more likely to churn as a customer. But we only worked on saving the customer. We didn't think of saving the employee, because on the other side, there was the employee who was also experiencing this stress, who was hearing this from the customer. So we have the opportunity to do a proactive save to an employee at a time when they're having stress, right? What typically would happen, the customer would say ridiculous, the call center agent needed to initiate the save team and transfer the customer, and then they're left to pick up the phone for the next customer, right? If they're lucky, they get a few-minute break. But to have the opportunity to speak with a peer or a coach, have a moment to breathe, to recover, such an opportunity, and such a time when we can reach out to them in real time, hear how they're doing. We could even offer them something, EAP, Headspace, right? 2 minutes of meditation. I mean, what an opportunity to feel like you're cared for at a time when something went really rough. So those are some examples of what we've seen happening with the personalized view. Now, my favorite area, the organic or employee view, some quick examples, noticing the time. One is a financial services company using an always on. And so this, I gave the example, a banker completes a transaction with a customer, and now they have a button that they can click on, and they can answer a couple of questions, and using either their voice, typing, or a video, provide their open-ended feedback about their idea, their suggestion, or their feedback. Like I said, really short, no more than 3 questions. And really the open end is where we get the insight. We don't have to figure out the right questions to ask the employee. We just let them tell us what's going on, and then we use the text analytics on the back end. And give you an example that I found so meaningful myself in using Medallia as a customer. We were running an employee always on, and I knew to run my text analytics for things like topics about communication, development, incentives, systems, tools, resources, coworkers, right? All those types of things. I had a number of different things we were running text analytics for, but I wasn't running text analytics for the word music. So music came up in the text that's checking for themes, common things that are coming up, and music came up. So why would bankers be talking about music? I'm new to banking. Maybe I just don't know how important music could be to a banker. So I raised it to the senior leadership team, and they told me they knew that bankers were complaining about the music because it had been removed from the branches as a cost-cutting measure, and they missed it. And I said, but did you read why the bankers said they missed the music? They said they're missing it because customers feel like their financial conversations are no longer private because the branch is silent. They think other people can hear them. So they're uncomfortable. So it was an inexpensive thing to bring back and had a significant impact on both employee and customer experience, but I didn't know to ask for that in advance. But employees could write in about it, and they wrote in about all kinds of things with those ideas of write-in campaigns. We had another customer running an always on, and we found the word box, B-O-X, coming up for them. And when we shared that with them, and we shared them what the employees were saying that they didn't feel like they had the opportunity to think outside the box. So that word came up. It was something that was talked about in the culture, and that's the way they said it. And it was something they were working on, and we could see employees bringing it up. So there's all kinds of examples like that. We found one the other day with mice, and they were talking about their computer mice. They'd been issued new computer mice, and they weren't working. And that's what came up. We had another one where the word fun came up. So I was really excited when I saw the word fun. Then when I went in to read, it was split about 50-50 between employees saying it was really fun to work at this retailer and employees saying it was no longer fun to work at the retailer. And then there was so much to learn about those two different groups and what was happening in their local environment to create fun or lack of fun. So valuable because employees can just say what it is at the time it's happening, and then we can figure it out on the back end. I'd mentioned before the importance of integrating it in business routines, not setting up a separate process for it, but communicating it through the way they normally communicate, whether that's a stand-up meeting, an email, a text, however they communicate. And integrating it in their regular meetings when they're making decisions about financials, about products, about customer experience, the employee voice would be there too, so that it's all the data they need to make a fully informed decision is available. And then the opportunity to bring in special topics Like I said, something happens like a merger and acquisition or a CEO town hall, able to quickly ask a question, have everyone go in, how did the message land? And quickly learn if there's something where we need to pivot or things are going well. We talked about the employee dashboard with Al's question. And then the key is action, not action planning. And that is really what is key. The data is coming in real time. Employees quickly get together with their manager. They talk about the feedback. They make a decision about how to improve it, how to go forward, take action and go, and just keep going because they're doing it already today. They're just doing it without much data. Another example of the organic or employee view is what we call the Executive Communicator. So we've seen some companies using this really well, and you've probably seen some examples on LinkedIn where an executive, often a CEO, wants to communicate with the company. And you've probably seen some where they'll send out an email direct to all employees, but the emails coming back are completely overwhelming. Or you see a video shared on LinkedIn and it's amazing. And you know the employees want to reach back out to the CEO or the executive and comment on the strategy they announced or comment on the words they said, but there's no way because it's only one-way communication. So the executive communicator is a way that the senior executive or the CEO can record a short video, send it to the employee population, and it comes actually as a survey for the employees to respond, either again by typing, using their voice, or recording their own video. In this way, it creates such connection. It gives the senior executive access to what the employees are saying and feeling, and it gives the employees a sense of being connected with the executive, seeing them, hearing them, not just the message in words, but how they said it and how they looked when they said it and what was the background when they said it, now that so many of us are at home. It creates such a sense of connection. And now the executive is not trying to manage it through email, which would be impossible, but through a simple app on their phone where they can quickly see the videos coming through, excuse me, and the comments coming through. They can filter them on a particular topic or just look at them randomly so they really feel like they have a sense or their finger on the pulse of the employees. And then, of course, an analytics team can run the text analytics to understand and take action, but really creating two-way communication. So worrying about the time, I'm going to be quick on this one. Signals. We've talked a little bit about signals. It's data beyond surveys that we can bring in about employees to have a better understanding of their experience. And here's just a small sample that I put together to give you some ideas of what signals could be. Some of you are probably already doing this, but the more we can bring in, the more we can really understand. And we can bring a combination of these signals together to have an understanding of, for example, health of a department. So some examples, we can look at events that are happening. Are they in an organization where there are a lot of transfers or almost never transfers, a lot of promotions, or more than average demotions? We can look at the employee themselves. So many pieces of information. I mean, simple demographics, as well as things, have they been on a performance improvement plan, or have their coworkers been? Have they had an ER issue? What is their performance rating, and what has been the change in their performance rating? Did they come from an acquisition, even if it was a while ago? I'm sure you all have been at companies where the acquisition happened 20 years ago and they talk about it as if it were yesterday, still impacting them day to day. Right? We talked about some examples in the department. We could look at things like, what is the turnover rate of the department? What percent of the department is high performers? Looking at the job, the kind of schedule they work, if the job's customer facing or not, if it's a core or non-core job. And then things about the manager or the combination of the employee manager. Are they similar? Are they different? What is the performance rating? Have they been terminated and now it's a new manager? Is the manager from the acquisition? Is the employee from the acquisition? Are both of them from the acquisition? So many interesting pieces of information we can bring together that together give us a much more robust picture of the experience employees are having. So back to some questions with Al. Let's see if I can get out of it this time.
Thanks, Melissa. Hey, just if you are listening, I was about to say from home or wherever you are, you can raise your hand in the panel to the right, and we can, if we have time, we can call on you and you can ask your question directly. So just know that's an option. I have a couple questions and I'm going to paraphrase Nicole's as well. Before I get to that one, however, I want to ask you this, because it's come up several times today. And it's this idea that everything that you're talking about, for me, and I can tell you're really enjoying yourself. You're like a kid in a candy store. You got all this data, all these possibilities, and it's like, it's obviously powerful, not just in the coolness analytics way, but to your point, it's affecting people's lives, affecting their experience at work and their well-being, as you highlighted in the initial segment. So given the multifaceted nature of everything that you've shared, what would you advocate be the governance model to prioritize what to look at, what journeys to create, what personas to focus on first? Given that you've been in employee experience for a while, many view it as overwhelming. Where do I start? I'm a proponent of getting the right people in the room first, and then exploring, what is going to be the objective, and then focusing on the how subsequently. Would you, echo that, and what would you advocate? What have you seen work with your, call it, leading practice companies?
Yeah, that's a great question, Al. And I think you're right. Of course, you need to start with an objective. And I think a way to get started is find a business leader with a business problem and help them solve it. Then you already have a leader who wants to take action, who's going to be a champion for you, and you're driving towards something. It helps line up everyone behind it, and they understand the importance of it. And when you talk about how it can seem overwhelming, and I do get excited about all the data. I feel like the more data, the better. But I know it can feel overwhelming, but I think it often feels overwhelming when we keep all the data in HR or in people analytics. Everyone can take action. Even the frontline employees can take action. Share the data, or as we say at Medallia, democratize the data. It's so hard from our center to know what's going on in all these different places all over the company. We can analyze, we can find trends, we can find high-level things to bring to senior executives, but let the local teams see the data. It's like I said, it's the start of the conversation. And so you share it with others and they'll start taking action, and you'll find natural champions, and it won't seem overwhelming to you because you'll find all these places where action is happening. And then you can share those best practices with other managers. We actually advocate our crowdsourcing tool as a way for managers to share with each other actions they've taken, so that the managers who are really active can share what they're doing with other managers who need inspiration and support.
Yeah, you're, how do I say this? I am, in this place when I think about employee experience, where I'm hopeful, I'm excited, and it's also daunting and ripe with risk. And this is where I'm going to paraphrase Nicole's question a little bit, because let's say there is some insight that you generate through any of the means that you mentioned. A manager takes action, and then the improvement of the employee or that group doesn't happen right away. And so what I'm getting at is that what we're trying to do is facilitate change and improvement over time. It's not just one event. It's not just you put a Band-Aid on it and it's going to heal and it's, everything's good. Some cases that is the case, but oftentimes it takes a more systematic, multi-pronged approach. When I kicked off this morning, I talked about the multi-dimensional nature of the employee experience. I mean, how many variables impact how we feel at work when we do our work? It's all over the place. And so my question is this: given the complexity of it, and given the fact that ultimately we have to have managers aligned with IT, with the senior leadership and all that ongoing alignment in and of itself is a challenge if the experience is going to be cohesive and there's going to be I'll use the word again, alignment. Can you speak to, and if it's governance and, who's guiding it with a mental model or framework, how would you advocate this alignment, happen? Is it Medallia as a solution offering that up, or do organizations come with their own mental model and construct that guides this work? What are your thoughts there?
So I think it's both. I mean, a tool like Medallia or a platform like Medallia makes it easy to share the information and to see what others are doing. So I think it helps break down those silos, because you can see, as we talked about before, sending the issues that are associated with IT to IT, facilities to facilities, right? But everyone can see them. So once we're all able to see the information, now we kind of have it laid out on the table for us, and it's less kind of keeping it secret or not knowing what's happening. So that's really the piece that Medallia brings, is that transparency. And then, of course, a workflow where you can see this was the issue, this is what was done, and this is what we learned from it. Everyone can benefit from that. And then another piece, as you said, really comes from the company's governance model. And again, I advocate not creating something separate where people are trying to figure out, how do we work on the experience issues? They're already working on experience issues every day. The IT team every day is trying to figure out how to deliver systems efficiently to employees, and how do we get them aligned with the processes that they use so that we can work effectively. We're just doing it now with information. So continue to work together as they have, but use the information to inform. I think the more we try and build around it, the more we're trying to focus on this bigger governance. I think it makes it so complex. Part of it's grassroots.
Yeah.
Employees see these issues, raise them, and they help solve them too. They're part of creating the culture in which they live and work.
That's one of my key takeaways in what you've shared thus far, is because many kind of view it as building a super tanker, and it's going to be this huge organizational change, and you get the pushback, oh, we're not there yet. What I'm hearing is that if you have a platform, it can be accessed, and the degree in which it's implemented and used would be up to the organization. Is that a fair playback?
It is. And you're right. I mean, eventually you may build this super tanker, but you don't have to have it on day one. You don't need this overarching governance in order to make change, right? Fix the music problem, like right? And that made forward progress. I mean, it wasn't the biggest thing in the world, but it affected every employee and every customer, right? And then we keep moving forward with those things, and we raise the larger things to a higher level, and the things that go to departments. I mean, you just keep making the forward progress, and eventually you'll build to it. But if you try and start building the whole thing at the beginning, it's overwhelming.
Well, I got two questions, and I see some more questions that are in the feed. I don't know if we're going to get to all of them, but I'll make sure you get your hands on them, Melissa. And if you want to follow up with those who've asked, that'd be fantastic. My question, and this is a quick one, hopefully, workflows. Do you have your own workflows, or do you work with your customers to design workflows that are custom to their realities?
So we have recommended workflows that we've used with other customers. And sometimes those work and you just put them in as they are. And others design new workflows. And I think a big part of it depends on how much, I guess I'm going to say, oversight and approval. Some just expect managers to do it, and they hold them accountable by showing it to employees. Others show reporting to senior executives so that they can quickly ping managers when things aren't being actioned fast enough. So we'll put time limits and things to say, have you actioned this, right? And it goes to a dashboard where an executive can see it. So we offer both.
Well, yeah, that was my hope. That would be the answer, both out of the box, but also the ability to customize. So, good for you all. At least my final question is around, and we could have our whole talk on this. So I'm leery of that. But it's really around data, privacy, confidentiality, transparency. Arguably, the deeper the insight we get as analysts, the more sensitive it is. We're getting, the fact that people are thinking and feeling a certain way, and sometimes that means being vulnerable and just letting them know, letting somebody know, like through a survey, for example, that something's not going right. And so what's your initial take, or what would you advocate an organization do to maintain trust and ensure the privacy and confidentiality that's necessary in doing our work?
So I want to have two answers to that. One is privacy is so important, right? It's part of building trust.
Mm-hmm.
But when we start with saying a survey needs to be anonymous in order to protect the employees, we start with broken trust.
Mm-hmm.
We need to start with the idea that employees can elect to share the information with their name or their face attached to it if they choose, or they don't have to. They can write it in and let it be confidential. But I think when we start with an anonymous survey, it really starts with the idea that there isn't trust here, and it's very hard to build from there. In one of my employers, we ran an always on that was identified. Employees' names were on the screen when they completed it. They didn't enter their name. It was sitting there, and they knew that they are identified, but we didn't share it with managers. But that created such a sense of trust, because it also gave them the idea that when I'm providing this feedback, I'm speaking directly to leadership. This isn't something on social media where I just say, this place sucks, right?
Yeah.
This could be better if we did this, right? There's better and worse ways to deliver these messages. So confidentiality is important, and employees should be able to select the level that's best for them, and including showing their face on a video and sharing their feedback. I mean, there's nothing more impactful than seeing an employee and their face and their expression and hearing their voice when they say how things are for them.
Yeah.
So meaningful. And that really drives action among executives.
Yeah. Well, good for you. Couldn't agree more. I mean, it humanizes, puts stories around this data. It creates an emotional response, which is often lacking when you're staring at a number. There are people behind them. So, good for you for doing what you're doing and how you're doing it. So as we wrap up, how can people learn more about you and what you're doing there at Medallia?
Well, of course, you can always come to our website. You can set a meeting with me anytime through the website, or I'm happy to take an email directly. Love to interact. And I plan to be back at PAFOW as often as you'll let me. So I'll be here to be able to be reached here too. Well, yeah, again, Melissa, thanks for doing what you do. Super appreciate you. And look forward to hopefully getting together in person before too long. I mean, we're in the neighborhood anyway. So that's right. All right. You be well. Bye-bye. You too. Bye.